Thank you for the sapling, and I'm sure this will grow into something that all of us will rejoice maybe 10 years down the line when you come here as alumni. So I thank you very much. My dear faculty members, because as an educationist, faculty is a very important part of this August gathering. Mr. Manoharan, our speaker, my dear students, it's a privilege that I'm here in LIBA, and specific mention to Geetanjali for having, persistently requested that I need to come for this event because it's a very prestigious event for the management students. And I know that how such events unfold to students, especially when you look forward to some kind of inputs, inspirational inputs from experiences that people like us gather in our lives. So I'm very happy, and I took this privilege to come here. And I chose this domain of education because I've been in this domain for the last 6 years. And just to give you a background of the domain, I would say that the colleges that I represent, where we have all specialities, so I kind of connect with students in different areas, whether it's engineering, whether it's medicine, whether it is management sciences. So all sciences we are having in our institutions. So I can understand and empathize with the audience today. So I thought I could use this forum to kind of implant some changes. And as much as this plant is there for me, I'm sure this would grow into your minds and you would become better persons, better leaders. And that's the objective of why I am here today. So when my day started today at 3 a.m. because I had to get up for my flight at 6. And I was just opening up the, Insight, LIBA Insight schedule. And then I was surprised to find out that wuka means in Zulu tribe language, to wake up. So I then come into Chennai, then how do I wake up? Because I walked into a restaurant which offers a favorite ghee dosa, So you walk into the restaurant and there you see something very different. You don't expect that behind the cashier counter you have some statement for the day. That's the least you expect. And what was very surprising is when I read that statement for the day, it read like this: the future is not something that we enter. The future is something that we create. So I thought, that's a good thing. I'll have my cup of coffee. That's a nice way that I can wake myself up and then come before you and try and see how I can create ideas for you so that we can all create a future that we think will be aligning with our values and thoughts that we have nurtured from our young ages. Because as my introduction goes, I had started my early career as an entrepreneur because I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. So my journey started very early as an entrepreneur. So I know that each one of y'all have very similar aspirations. And this is the age where you need to really capitalize on. And the program that you have organized today on this VUCA initiative actually is an opportunity for you as students, because you as students would be more experiencing the VUCA world than we have, because for us it was a more stable world for 20 years before things changed even for us. So I think that's a great program and title that you all have chosen for your insight. And I'm very happy that I'm here to share that insight with you. I would like to quote some of the examples that we have, we have been experiencing the last 20 years. So if you see, 10 years ago, you did not have a Facebook. Maybe you didn't have, before that, 10 years before that, you didn't have the web that we envisage as today. So many things have changed in these 20 years, which we don't know the next 10 years what it could offer. So that's the excitement that you have, because a lot of changes are happening very dramatically in these last 20 years. And you are right in the midst of those changes, because for you, you are born into a world where change is a constant. So that's where the volatility, the handling of how do you handle an uncertainty, how do you handle the complexity and the details of how do you handle areas where you will have a lot of introspection to do as a leader, because today everybody will look up to you. How are you going to lead yourself and your company that you're going to be representing in a constantly changing world? If you also note that 10 years from now, the offices that we think where we go physically and sit down and do our daily work is not going to be the same anymore, because there is so much that is happening around us in the technology area that it will be more a collaborative environment than an environment where you are able to do something specific which is skill-based to your present knowledge. So employability also will be a very different scenario in your generation. So unemployment is already a big issue in terms of not only in the West, but it is also caught up in a country like India. So how do we address this kind of a scenario where we need to have more flexibility, more freelancing, and more collaborative environment where our leadership also has to emerge in terms of managing this change constantly? So that is the thing that we need to take forward. And the reason why I am representing the education sector to you today is the change has to be implanted at this early stage in your education. So the reason faculty is part of the audience and the students part of the audience, and this being a postgraduate program, we need a lot to do going forward so that we make students better prepared to handle leadership that is required to handle changes. So when you look at a situation, how many of you have read this book, The Iceberg is Melting? How many of you have read this book as management students? Can you raise your hands? There is an author called Cotter, John Cotter. How many of you have known him as a leader for change management? Because you're all management graduates. So if I ask how many of you know Philip Kotler, at least you should know, because it's the Bible for marketing. So we all know that. So today you have so many type of leadership thought processes that are happening around us. And it is very important for each of you to get access to that book, because I know one of the professors smiling, I'm sure he's read it, but probably he's not shared his knowledge with you. But the thing is, it's a very interesting book, very light reading. I bought it in the airport. I read it in a 1-hour flight. So that's it. And the book is all about, it's a story. It's how a story is told. It's a very narrative form of a story in terms of how you manage change. And it is, the characters in the story are all penguins, because the ice is melting. And how do you recognize that there is a problem? Because the penguin family is not recognized this as a problem. And tomorrow, if the ice melts, they all get into the sea and they are eaten by the sea fish, the whales and the other fish animals that are in the sea. So they become very vulnerable. So therefore, in a world where there is a lot of volatility, where there is a lot of complexity, how do you bring in a leadership to even identify that there is a problem within, so that you are able to make a change? So this is what I want to, I want to kind of give this as a thought to you, because when I'm talking about different questions in mind, how higher education can give you that framework on which you can develop yourself, because you're not anymore undergrad student where you have a prescribed set of syllabus on which education is imparted to you as a management graduate. In fact, I was fortunate that when I came to the college institution in the morning, where I was in the faculty room, and I had an opportunity to interact with many of the students, whether it's first years or some of the senior students. And most of them, what I could relate my management education 30 years ago with them. So I was just reflecting with some questions, what I could do 30 years ago. It is nothing much has changed, even in your scenario. So therefore, I was thinking that I want to use this forum where we need to see how to bring certain changes in the way both the faculty as well as the students engage themselves, so that education actually is more a transformational tool to help you become better leaders. So that is why we are all in a management program. So what I am seeing is the questions that we should be asking during this period of time is what is changing in the higher education environment that will make you a better leader? Who is the customer? See, that is also important, because we as educationists, we forget sometimes that we don't know who's our customer. So depending on from which point of view you look at, we never really look at the customer. And what are the initiatives that make the customer motivated to participate? What type of initiatives that we should take to make the customers more engaged and more participative in the entire program, so that they begin to internalize the learning process. That is when success comes in terms of how you impart higher education and make it more relevant to today's leadership. And what could be the differentiators in education that we can build so that you become more engaged in the program as a student, because here the customer is the student. So typically when we sit in these governing body meetings, because in education also we have a governing body, we have eminent professors from different streams of life. So they will come in and then they give their inputs in terms of how we build this. So when we look at such eminent people in the governing body, one of the things that we constantly say is, what is the kind of differentiators that we can build into our education program? Because we can always complain as educationists that we need to do something different. But as a private institution, in fact, I was sharing with some of the team members, as a private institution, it is always possible for us to be the change leaders. A well-established government-run initiative will have a lot of funding, but they need not be the best change managers. So we as private institutions can bring that change. So that is how I was envisioning that I can bring about some thought process both for the faculty and the student community. So one of the things that we see that is constantly changing in education is the delivery mechanism of the engagement with the students. The pedagogy is very important. See, today as a management institution, when I ask some of the students, do you all do online programs? Because there are so many online courses that are available. And you as students, how many of you do programs that are specialized in nature? It could be finance, it could be operations, it could be brand management, but you want to take the best of the case studies to make you understand conceptually and try to make you think differently. So what I hear is, at least in a situation where I had about 15 students, I had only one student who said that he does certain courses on financial management through the online program. So I was at least happy that students have understood it. But we as educationists, how are we trying to build it into our Board of Studies program so that we are able to embed the knowledge that is now available freely, which is called, the concept, the framework is called MOOC, that is Massive Online Courseware. So this is how we need to kind of build the educational engagement, because technology is available. Technology has become a disruptive way of trying to, do things that has not been possible before in a collaborative manner. So the teaching has always been a classroom exercise rather than a real-time exercise. So I can give you an example to relate to what we are trying to do so that you are able to get an association of what we can do to change. So, excuse me. So we have a women's engineering program, and most of our students at least come from the district. When I say come from the district, they are not city bred. So they have a lot of, apprehension in terms of how to, get better exposure and be more self-confident and be more articulate and be more expressive. How do we do that? So the traditional way of just coming to the classroom, taking your exams, and then going for your, going through your education program, then sitting for a job interview is pretty much past. It is no more going to be interesting, and it's not going to be more effective because there is competition. As you know, today the number of students available is far higher in terms of numbers, but actually in terms of employable skills, it is very, very less. Because they say, even in management, they say the number of employable students among the management graduates is less than 20%. So if you look at the number of management institutions and you look at the students, why would that ratio not be better? Because I would say the methodology of making it relevant for the industry that they want to aspire for is not available to them. So here is an example what we have done. What we are doing is we have started the finishing school right from the first year, finishing school. So what are the things that you need to do? See, you want to join a program, a career in terms of joining a company, because sorry to Mr. Manoharan's reference to TCS or Infosys, but they still continue to be the largest employer. So when you look at the number of job opportunities, when we look at an educational level, 70 to 80% of students are generally placed in IT industries because of the numbers, not because of their need, but because that is the only opportunity that is coming by. So given these situations, how do I ensure that my average salary goes up, say from 3 lakhs to 6 lakhs to 8 lakhs? So that is an objective that a student would like to know. So we have done it in a different way. So we said, can we predict what are the kind of job skills that are required, say 2 years from now? Like Mr. Manoharan was very fortunate that his daughter could identify genetics 8 years ago, okay? But how many parents or how many educationists or teachers are willing to kind of engage with the students and say, this is what is going to be good for you 5 years down the line? I doubt it. So what we have done is, we have identified that there are certain skills 3 years down the line is going to be very important. So we are looking at data analytics, which is very important for even management students. We are looking at cloud computing. We are looking at enterprise data. So how do we bring all this knowledge into our curriculum in terms of internalizing it with the students, irrespective of whether this is a course that is prescribed in the syllabus or not? So we organize special programs for students. Excuse me. We organize special programs for students and ensure right from the second year onwards, these programs are part of the regular curriculum. And in addition to this, we have started something called a CXO mentorship program. And I would suggest that even a management institution like yours, which is very prestigious, should have a mentorship program where a group of students should be with the leaders. So it is easy for you in a city environment where you can be with a group of leaders at least 3 days in a semester. In your case, it is a 3-month trimester program. So at least in every trimester, you should spend 3 days with a CEO or a CXO in any organization, small or big, doesn't matter. So you kind of shadow him for those 3 days. And then you do learning by being there with him. And therefore, that is true management in terms of how to lead from the front, how to understand what are the problems that are surrounding the business, and how to position yourself for the kind of work that you want to do. So if you read that book, The Iceberg is Melting, you would understand the relevance of what I am telling, because most of us as leaders are a mismatch in the industry, at least for the first few years, because we are not able to understand the ground realities of what our responsibilities are as management leaders, because we as from premier institutions like yours, we join in the middle management level. We don't join at the lowest levels. We join in at least a 3 to 4 year senior management level. So which means there is a lot of expectations that the industry is having around us. So how do you manage that expectation? Because today, as even the earlier speakers were mentioning to you, the volatility and the uncertainty has to make you a leader who can manage change constantly. And that is where I think this is very relevant to you. And I would urge that some of you, at least in the board of studies, who can influence the board of studies, are able to factor this in terms of your program, so that you're able to better enrich the quality of education inputs and opportunities that we provide to students, so that they become better managers, and therefore these become differentiators for LIBA and make LIBA a much more proactive institution to the industry. I also asked the group of students, how many of you have, you know that there are, of course here it is mentioned there is some student exchange program, but really how many of us are looking at that student exchange program? And here is some clue that I would like to give you. See, a lot of the Western institutions are interested in sending their students to countries like India. So how do we make LIBA an attractive destination for them to make students come here and do projects alongside with you? So you have a lot of international bodies, you have a lot of international student bodies. So those student bodies can, I would like that those student bodies to be listed here, so that what can happen is a couple of things. For them, it's very important for their exposure to come to a country like India and then get education in a more engaged way in a developing economy. So I think China is doing a little bit of that, but none of our universities are trying to do it in a big way. I know some of the Delhi universities are doing that, but I'm sure LIBA, with all its glory and all its infrastructure, can make it more interesting for students to be brought from these different countries and then work alongside with you on projects. So what happens, you as a student culturally is able to engage with them, and they are able to get better practical exposure, because they would also give a leg and an arm to work in a developing economy, because they improve their exposure. And today business has become so global. So a lot of the companies are wanting their executives also to be here. If you look at Hindustan Levers, most of the top executives who are stationed abroad are actually from India, because they found that there are a lot of good leadership available in India, and then they're taking them after many years of experience and putting them into different locations in different part of the world. So definitely they will be interested to send their students here to understand how to engage them, to have the knowledge of spreading their engagement in a global environment. So we as Indians have that advantage, because we are in a country that has so much of growth, so much of diversity. So we will be in a better position to understand diversity and handle uncertainties and volatilities, and complexities, because we understand complexities in a much different way, because we are in a country where there is so much things happening and nothing is streamlined and nothing is a formula cookie cutter. There's no cookie cutting type of things that happen in a country like India. So even the markets are so different. You go from Tamil Nadu, you go to AP, you go to Delhi, the market situations are so different that it will be very interesting if you as a student body can bring that element in your placement. Having said that, I would also like to say that today, if we have to survive in an industry where, this model has to be established, you need to know that old styles of managing predictability, where there's a lot of linearity in terms of, okay, last 10 years sales data and projecting them to the next 5 years is impossible, because there are so many elements that influence that linearity. So that is something that you have to understand as management students. See, today I might start an industry hoping that competition is restricted to the boundaries that I feel are the boundaries. And my boundaries would be the southern states of India, without taking into factoring that there could be a disruption in terms of technology, there could be a disruption in terms of market, there could be a disruption in terms of the usage, or the style or the lifestyle. There could be so many disruptions. Because we are now getting more and more integrated, I would like to give you an example of such kind of a disruption. See, today you want to start something like, if you wanted to start something on a camera, see, today a company like Kodak is irrelevant to this generation. My generation, Kodak was one of the brand leaders, like what you would say iPhone is to you. Kodak was our brand leader. Today, Kodak is no more relevant to you as a generation. Similarly, you don't have, certain technologies which have already been there 10 years ago relevant to you. So how do you as leaders of tomorrow try to bring in that change in a very short time and then learn, unlearn, and make yourself a better leader? This is what will differentiate you and make you more dearer to the company that you are working with. Or if you as an entrepreneur are trying to do something, you are able to manage that expectation and make yourself more nimble so that you are very successful in your business. So these things, there are a lot of things that are happening around us, but I'm very sure that these are the disruptions that you need to be very alert to. So I mentioned about the differentiators, and it is very important for you. I will also tell you that how we are managing certain disruptions in the education, because I want to keep it very simple. It is not specific to the state of Tamil Nadu, but because I'm representing in the state of AP. So we had an era in education where the number of colleges were growing year by year, where today we have more than 700 colleges in engineering. So how do you survive in an environment like that? And you have a lot of factors that came in. We had the pre-YSR. How many of you know YSR? YSR is a figure like Amma here. So pre-YSR period and a post-YSR period. So what happened in the pre-YSR period? Pre-YSR period, there was a lot of colleges that they were growing on a constant basis. The number of colleges expanded throughout the state. But once YSR came into the picture, he started making education free. So fortunately, that never happened here. Education is not free, but what instead this state has done, they have made the education where they're able to give 20,000 rupees per student who is a first-time graduate in the family. That's again a disruption. How do you handle these political disruptions? So when you just imagine yourself in a business environment where more than 60% of your revenue is going towards salary, because as an education institution, we are in the service sector. So in a service sector, larger amount of revenue goes towards salary, because it's your knowledge workers. So how do you handle a situation where your receivables is 1 year, because the government has to pay you the money, and you have suddenly come to a situation where you have a monthly disbursement of 60% of your revenue, but your revenue comes after 1 year. How do you handle this? So it is not very easy, even for a big industry group, it is not easy. So similarly, a disruption has happened here in Tamil Nadu after the present government has taken over by introducing such a populistic measure of 20,000 rupees fee waiver, which the government is supposed to reimburse, which it will reimburse after 1 year from for the first time graduate in the family. Similarly, there is another disruption that I can talk about. The Amma canteens that have sprawled, I think there are more than 19 canteens that has come across the country, and some of the organized restaurants are now facing the pressure of business, you know, in terms of price points, in terms of walk-ins, so in terms of profitability. So I'm just giving you real-time examples. It's for you to think, because if you are a leader in any sector, disruptions can come from anywhere. So these things make it more interesting for you. Actually, you become more important to what you're trying to do. If you're trying to do as an entrepreneur, or if you're trying to do it as a business leader who working for somebody else, this type of handling different situations and contradictions and managing this and trying to be nimble in terms of making changes will help you become better. So that's why there is more opportunities for you today than what it was when it was 20 years ago, where things were very linear. So there's no linearity anymore in your decision making from historic data. So that makes it very interesting for you. So given these complexities of business, my advice to the faculty is that we need to have a certain engaged board of studies which look at the relevance of education in making them more online, bringing in better resources from wherever they exist across the globe. Have your own platform, not just a workflow which talks about, you know, assignments and student data and things like that, but also content that can be aggregated online, which is specific to LIBA, and make it very engaging so that those projects can be participation through the faculty and the students, and we can build a certain structure in which learning takes place in a virtual learning environment. It has to be a virtual learning environment. You don't need to necessarily go to a class. You will be better off if a program is there for an entire semester where you are with the industry, but the core learning happens online and virtual, where you don't have to spend a classroom environment. You can be anywhere in the country or in the state, but learning happens nevertheless, and you still are able to be more productive and more meaningful to both your personal career as well as to your objective of being with somebody in terms of managing their change. You also have to have regular demonstration of learning portfolio and assessment criteria established in your workflow model. And a lot of feedbacks with the instructors. You can have virtual instructors because they can be integrated into your program. And it will be more engaging and meaningful to you because you would learn much more, and the factor that will make you think will be more current, and it will never be outdated. So that is my message to the faculty members, and my advice to the, I don't know, you call yourself LIBAians, I'm not sure, but given that, just like VUCA, I think you have to coin your own new things. And my acronym for LIBA, maybe you already have it, is leadership, initiative, being very bold, and being very aggressive. So this is what I would like you to be in your management, and I wish LIBA all success for this program.